comfortably zoned with the Zigzag Man in Alameda, California, pushing on the doors of life marked pull and fighting the unholy trinity as we go. Big business, organized religion, and government. I am back, and you are comfortably zoned with me, the Zigzag Man, in Alameda, California, right across the bay from San Francisco in Northern California, USA. And I'm happy to be back, thrilled that I have a guest from, where you from? Where you from, Ed?
Man, I'm from the East.
Gentlemen, former New York Met, former Kansas City Royal, and one of the most wonderful people. You're a motivational speaker. You're nice enough to come on my show, which makes you A1 in my book. Thanks, Ed Hearn, for being here.
My pleasure, partner. Yeah, I'm from the East Coast of Florida, man.
Oh, that's right. I forgot. But where are you now? You're 2 hours away. You're in Kansas City, outside of Kansas City.
Yes, sir.
Right,
we're a suburb of Kansas City. Yes, sir.
Suburb of Kansas City, and you've lived basically your life in three different places. You lived in Florida on the East Coast. You lived in New York. You got to tell me about your experiences living in New York. Tell me about that a little bit. About the.
Oh my goodness! Well, from a guy who grew up in the South, on the Atlantic Ocean,
right?
I
You're
side that ice.
You're an outdoors person. Biggest building around is 3 stories, City Hall. Am I correct?
Just about right.
All right.
Yep.
And here you come to New York. Tell me about how you got into baseball a little bit, and we're going to be brief about all this. Your life and your importance transcends the experience you had in baseball, which cannot be denied. You played on a World Championship baseball team.
Yes, sir. Well, I was
all right.
I was an athlete growing up in high school, and had many opportunities from a football and baseball standpoint, and also had opportunities, had a nomination appointment to the West Point Military Academy, and also several Ivy League schools, and was drafted in the 4th round by the Philadelphia Phillies, and just decided that I was ready to pursue my dream, and 4th round draft choice was high enough to that you're considered a prospect instead of a suspect.
Right.
So I signed my first contract and was sent to Helena, Montana for rookie ball. So that was about 2,500, 3,000 miles away, and 17 years old, right out of high school, and that was the beginning.
And you signed a Topps contract at that time.
Well, I guess I can't remember that long ago, but at some point I certainly did. You would know that.
Right, we talked about Cy Berger, whom I worked for 14, 15 years in the 80s and 90s as the West Coast Topps representative, and how important baseball cards are. And you said something that was really fun. You didn't like your your rookie baseball card. You thought you looked a little gruff.
Yeah, that's a good description. I kind of, being a rookie and you're not seasoned in the ways of all the things that happen in the big leagues, but somebody at Wrigley Field just asked, hey, want to take a photo? And whatever. And then when I saw the card come out, I remembered the exact situation and remember having no idea that it was the Topps guy, and it was my rookie card. And so I might have cleaned up a little bit better and come up with some better pose, but I'm just very thankful to even have a rookie card.
Absolutely. And you ran something by. Let me pick up on this a little bit. You were offered Ivy League. You could have played in the Ivy League, which means not just you're athletically skilled. They were telling you're a bright guy. I mean, they're not going to take you in the Ivy League because you can turn a double play alone. You got to make the grade in the Ivy League.
Yes, sir. As is the West Point Academy, which may even be more challenging. But yeah, I was raised all three of us children were raised to, do the best we can in everything we did. And unfortunately, I laughingly say that my parents told us because they give these kind of an IQ test when you're like in kindergarten or first grade. Well, if I had known better, I would have really sandbagged that, because my parents always says, we know you have the marbles, because when you were young, you were tested. So, I mean, that's the kind of thing you need to learn ahead of time. But unfortunately, I apparently had some marbles, and so the expectation, which I think is a great way that we all should maximize the gifts we're given. And, my parents emphasized that.
Okay. How did they take to your athletic ability as well as your intellectual? How'd they balance it for you?
Well, I mean, I think the priorities certainly were on academics as a primary, but, my dad was an athlete through high school, and of course my mom was involved with, the lady side of things. She played a little varsity sports in high school, but they never went on beyond that. But, I think it's very important, and they understood and supported us in activities outside of just schoolwork, because there's a lot to be learned from sports and band and all kinds of different activities, and they just exposed us to different opportunities and allowed us to, choose what we wanted to do, and they encouraged that, because they realized that there is a lot to be learned from things outside the classroom.
How were you scouted heavily? And did the Philadelphia team, did they tell you they were looking at you and they were considering you? Were they feeling you out? Were they? How does that work for a kid?
Yes, sir.
With ability in high school.
These scouts are just, they're all over the place, and it's hard occasionally somebody slips through the cracks where you have a very late draft round pick that turns into a Hall of Famer. But in general, they scour the country. They have contacts, and people alert them to, certain guys that have, they're gifted and have the tools and the attitudes are becoming more important. Even grades, they like to see smart kids if they can. And, I began to be scouted my sophomore year for baseball. And Andy Simonek, the old Philadelphia catcher. Yes, right. Sir. He was the Philly scout. He found me and playing near Melbourne, Florida, and followed me through the last 3 years of my baseball there in high school, and as did other teams. In my senior year, I probably had 18 to 20 scouts at every game initially, and until I was failing miserably hitting halfway through the season, and then they kind of disappeared a little bit. But Andy was following me. He didn't care. He had seen enough and all this. But my mom said, you got to get your eyes checked, because I was hitting like $190 in the senior year, being scouted, as a potential top 3 round pick, and I went and got my eyes checked, and sure enough, I had developed astigmatism and got glasses, and then eventually hit like a senior that's being scouted should hit. And but right. A lot of scouts were gone. But there were several teams interested in. But Andy was he was sold. They brought in cross-checking scouts and national scouts, and that's how they kind of compare. Say a kid out west in say your area. Then the national cross-checker would come and watch the same player in Florida. And then they would compare notes, and then they would tabulate, all the reports, and come draft day, they would have people ranked, and whoever was left of that choice, that's how it kind of works.
And they'd make a very subjective decision.
Yes, sir.
Because it's like shooting craps. Who's going to develop? What do you attribute to your development? Because here you're coming out of high school, you're playing pro ball. You got to increase your ability along the lines. 2 or 3 years coming up in the minors. Who helped you most with your development coming up? Was Andy Simonek involved in that too, being a former catcher?
Yeah, that's a good question. big man. Andy wasn't. Scouts aren't really involved in the developmental part of thing, but they look for traits, just like in the corporate world, in the hiring system. I mean, there are certain intangibles beyond just the physical talent. And so, they really do assess, especially in the modern day. Back in the old days, it was more just about, hey, if you can hit it out of the park, we don't care, if you're a bum. But, of course, with money involved like it is today, they kind of screen guys pretty thoroughly. And but I would have to say without doubt that my father helped instill in me and learn the value of a work ethic, and that you need to, if you're going to be average, well, you're going to end up, if you're only willing to do what the other people are doing, you're just going to end up being an average person. But if you want to excel, and my dream of being a professional athlete, that's a big dream, and so you have to have a big work ethic. And he pushed me pretty good early on when I was very young, and I was involved with a contest called Pump, Pass, and Kick, and he said he encouraged me strongly to practice around the year for that. And the first couple of years, I'm like, okay, this is getting a little old. But then I started seeing myself up on the sign of the Ford Motor Company that sponsored Pump, Pass, and Kick. Hey, congratulations, Eddie Hearn, state champion and this and that. Well, you begin to equate, just like Pavlov's dogs. You do a command and you get a treat. Well, I started liking the treat called success.
All of a sudden, your ego is sky high. I got to interrupt for 1 second. Are you the Hearns related to Jim Hearn, who pitched for the Giants and the Phillies back in the 50s? Does that name ring a bell?
I get that question sometimes, and not at all to my knowledge. We've looked and just not any direct connection.
Okay. I
think we're all related in some way, but
right. And when you were in New York, my other question: did they used to call you Hearn?
No, they didn't. But that wouldn't be surprising, would it?
Ed Hearn, with a New York accent.
What people did, a lot of times they would put an S on my name because of Tommy Hearns, the boxer.
Oh, yes, I remember. Yes. But so tell me about your first day in the big leagues. I will skip ahead a little bit. Who told you were being called up?
Well, I toiled through some injuries early in my minor league career and ended up signing with the Mets and spending 3 years in their minor league system for a total of 8.5 years. And I was in AAA with the Mets and playing out at Tidewater, which is Norfolk, Virginia. And I was called up to the big leagues in early May. And it was after a game in Pawtucket, Rhode Island. We were playing the Red Sox minor league AAA team. And our manager came in, called me down to his hotel room after the game, and he knew that I had been a guy that had hung around for quite a long time, and so he was ecstatic for me. And when he broke the news to me that I was going to the big leagues, and
who was that manager?
Him excited. His name was Sam Perlazzo. Sam's been in the game and still is in the game. He's probably long term. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That says it all. Scouts, player development guys, managers in the minors, coaches in the minors, they take such incredible pride when one of the players make it. And 8.5 years, years ago, that wasn't a long time to spend in the minors. But that's a long time, and to have make it that far. And this is what, 68 when you were called up?
No, 86.
Hey, I'm sorry, 88. You were called up in 86. I was thinking of saying 85, but so you called up right at that time. And anything about that magical year stand out to you that you want to talk about that hasn't ever been said? Maybe misconceptions that we have about what went down. Tell me an impression that you got that we might learn from.
Well, that year, 1986, is been well documented in the annals of sports history, even all sports, because the 1986 postseason play was just absolutely phenomenal, and it's ranked in the top 5 by most of the sports pundits and ESPN, et cetera, and surveys of things. And but that was the year that everybody remembers the ground ball through Bill Buckner's legs when we were playing the Red Sox, and we were down in Game 6, 2 strikes, 2 outs to 4 different hitters, and they were 1 strike away from winning it all. And
yes, they were.
But prior to that, what made the entire playoff postseason so exciting was that we faced the Houston Astros in the National League playoffs, and we had our hands full. We were down. We went 16 innings in Game 4. Back then, it was only a 5-game division series, and it was just a massive back and forth. And then there was a fellow pitching for the Astros at the time named Mike Scott, who had been a former Met, but had developed a really nasty splitter, and he cheated with it. So if we did not win that Game 6, we would have faced Mr. Scott again on Game 5, and then quite frankly, he had our number, and we didn't want any part of that next game. So it was a real duel. On the other side of the fence, the Red Sox were very close to not making it, as the California Angels had them on the ropes until Donnie Moore gave up the home run.
Right. Yes.
Right, and that affected Donnie so much that eventually
Donnie Moore,
he took his life.
Right.
Yeah, Donnie took his life over that eventually. It was such a big crisis.
That was tragic.
Yes.
Another trivial from that playoff series, Tom Seaver played on the Red Sox that year.
Yeah, I vaguely remember that. Because he was not really a factor.
He wasn't.
In the play. So that's not something. I mean, of course, I know Tom, and but he was very much at the end of his career there, and but he wasn't part of the organization. I do know that. But as far as impactful on that postseason, that World Series, that was just not.
I'm just going to make an editorial. I'm just going to make an editorial comment about that team. That could be the deepest team. I mean, to say nothing about the skill, you got Strawberry and Gooden and Hearn and a whole bunch of guys, Mitchell and Knight. It was deep. You had Danny Heap coming off the bench. It was an incredibly deep team. Hojo wasn't getting everyday playing time. It was just a terrific team. And just from an athletic standpoint, all the hullabaloo around it that came later, it kind of shades the fact that was a tremendously talented ball club. And as a lifelong Met fan, I want to tell you I'm grateful. It was incredibly exciting. I can remember that ball going through Buckner's legs, and I just thought they're going to win tomorrow. It's just like in '73, when I went to the 6th game of the World Series and they lost, I knew they were going to lose the next day. Isn't momentum a big part of it, or is momentum just who your next day pitcher is?
No, I mean, momentum is definitely a part of not only baseball, but of life. I mean, I think, we get on a roll in every aspect of life, and baseball is no different. And but momentum in a sports arena is something that can be just very powerful, especially because not only the players, but some people will say in football, in college, they call it the 12th man, or in baseball, it's the 10th man, and it's the crowd, and their surge when momentum changes, like it did strongly in the '86 World Series in that Game 6. I mean, one of my most vivid memories is seeing the Red Sox family behind home plate on the third base side, just ecstatic. I mean, they were within one strike of being world champions, and the families and moms, dads, and brothers, sisters, wives were just ecstatic. And the Mets fans on the first base side behind home plate were just like they were at a morgue. But as we got a hit here, hit there, 4 different hitters later, it just totally turned around. And I agree with you that, momentum carrying in, and you said, you knew we were going to win Game 7. And I would agree totally with that. But we'll forget that there was a potential momentum buster, and it was called rain the following day. And so it was Game 7 when it was a day after, so it was a missed day, and there was an opportunity to have that momentum slow down, and I think it did. Early in the game, we fell behind in Game 7 as well, but we came back much sooner, and I think the fans still had the momentum. We had it as well, but I had concern. Probably others did it in their heart that, man, we want to play right now.
Right.
Exciting Game 6 win, and then here you got to sit at home or at your apartment or whatever, and you're at the stadium, you're waiting out, and then it's canceled, and now you got to, Boston has a chance to recover somewhat from what could have been a definite knockout punch.
Yes. Looking back from a managerial standpoint, do you think that Buckner should have been taken out by Johnny McNamara and Stapleton been put in?
I certainly the case could be made for that. Absolutely. But it, as you know, in baseball or in sports or in life itself, hindsight is always 20/20, and it's easy to point fingers like that. But no one, including me or us on the opposing team, really knows. Maybe there were factors that nobody knew except John McNamara, the manager. And maybe there was a distinct reason, or maybe it was just a lapse in a move that he could have made that might have made a difference.
Right. Well, sometimes no move works out for you, and sometimes it doesn't. This time it didn't, and you got the ring. Do you still wear the ring on occasion?
Oh, yes, sir. I the World Series ring, and actually have a player's model of the World Series trophy that we keep locked up in the safe. But I wear the ring. I wear it when I feel that or know that I'm going to be around other people that would enjoy it, because it's not a common thing to see, and I'm very, very, very liberal on putting it on somebody's hand. Say, take a picture with it. Feel free to, and it's great for kids. But what also I enjoy doing is when I have my ring and when I'm out speaking and all, to see adults, especially men. I mean, women love sparkle, right? So that's a given. I mean, bling. They like the bling, okay? That was born into them from the very beginning. But when you see a grown man, put a ring on and his hand's trembling, and they're just so scared of I've had to say, oh, I don't want to put that on. I don't want to drop it or something, and at that point I'll take it and just, oh my gosh, I dropped it on the floor, for on carpeting especially. But it's really interesting to see. To me, it's a symbol of something that happened in my life, and I was blessed to be a part of that team. But I hate jewelry, actually. I mean, I don't wear a watch. I don't even wear a wedding band most of the time. Now, when I'm speaking, that's just part of people. That's just part of the package of Ed Hearn coming is, hey, he'll be wearing his World Series ring. Well, I used not to wear my wedding band for the longest time when I'd be speaking.
Which is part of another package, which
is another package. But I just don't like wearing jewelry. So one day after a big corporate program, some of the stories I tell are about how my wife and I met, and that we wouldn't have met if I wasn't doing something for other people. And as you know, I'm a big believer in making a difference in the lives of other people. And it's a good story. And
you told me a wonderful phrase, Ed. We talked yesterday, and obviously, and you told me this wonderful, repeated it 2 or 3 times in the last 24 hours. It's from success to significance.
Yes, sir.
Whoa. You told me that yesterday. You remember, I went, oh, I'm considering myself someone who thinks about words and how they're put together in sentences, and that was absolutely incredible. Hold on.
Good.
I'm delighted that that's going to be in my life for a long time. How did that come about?
Good.
And I don't want to dwell on it. You've had some bad luck physically since leaving baseball. Before leaving baseball, you hurt your arm, had to leave baseball, and you've had bad physical problems, and your momentum was going south.
Yes.
And all right, and
yes, sir.
You turn that around, and it's not people. If you judge people on not how they're doing when they're up there. If I'm talking about Ed Hearn when he's celebrating the world championship is one thing, but talking about Ed Hearn when he's down and almost out, tell me about the moment you turned it around. That's very, very important.
Well, to give your audience a little backdrop, I was traded to the Royals after that World Series years because they wanted a young catcher here in Kansas City to be with that young pitching staff they had in '85 that won the World Series just the previous year. And, the Royals were seeking me, and finally late in spring I was here, and then I did here, and then I blew my shoulder out 2 weeks in the season, and major reconstructive surgery and a couple of years to battling back. And, it doesn't take a large percentage of loss of the ability or an injury to knock you out. It's highly competitive, and it's the difference between guys who are even guys in Double-A baseball. It's very small. And but anyway, my career came to an abrupt end very prematurely, and then I was making the transition into the real world. And unbeknownst to me, right in the beginning of my training into my career in the real world, as I call it, and most of us ball players say, we'll wait. We don't want to go to that real world stuff. And so, but I was in training, and I was just feeling awful. And so I went to the doctor, and next thing you know, I had seen 3 doctors, and I was diagnosed with end-stage renal failure, and I was diagnosed with a condition called hypogammaglobulinemia, which is a lack of production of gamma globulin, which is very important to your body, and I've been on a $10,000 IV treatment for the last 22 years for that. And I had sleep apnea, a very severe case of sleep apnea, and it wasn't obstructive sleep apnea. It was a rare central nerve apnea. So, I tell people, I kind of jokingly, but I think it's a good description of my life, from the penthouse to the outhouse and back. And as you said, you have your health. It's one thing, and it's more important than the wealth. Well, I lost my opportunity at big wealth. Then I lost my health. And, that was tough. But I still had the same, I had the intangibles inside of me still, from what it takes to overcome, because you don't become a big leaguer without learning to hit life's curves and getting back in the batter's box when you face challenges. Baseball is a game of
adjustment,
a failure, failure. You fail, as a hitter 7 out of 10 times, and you're a Hall of Famer. So we are accustomed to learning how to deal with failure and having to get up off your butt and get back in the, you strike out 3 times and you make them up in the bottom of the ninth, and the game's on the line, and you can turn the whole thing around that last at bat. So I had enough of that in me, and so I began to fight to get my feet under me, my foundation, and my foundation had been strong in upbringing, but I worked hard. I just began to really. I met a man by the name of Zig Ziglar, and I remembered something he said. He said, "You can change where you're at in life by what you put into your mind," and that stuck with me. And when I was going through the health problems, etc., I said to myself, I got to fight back. And I became a reader. And even though I had great grades in school and all that stuff, I wasn't a big reader. You know, The Old Man and the Sea was my favorite book because it was little and small, and it's a great book, Ernest Hemingway. But I began to read and listen to tapes, and I began to recover from all the loss that I experienced. But, you know, what I tell people is it's not at the World Series of your life. It's not the penthouse of your life when you truly grow as a person. I mean, a lot of people think, and that ties into the success part of the two words that I spoke, success and significance. You know, at the penthouse, you're experiencing success, and that's okay. But, you know, when you go to the outhouse of life, when life throws you curves and you're hit by knockdown pitches, however you want to phrase it.
Right. Oh,
that is the moment that counts, as you said earlier. Is are you going to get back up and get back in there and battle? And so I kind of jokingly tell people that, you know, the penthouse is great. The outhouse is not so great, but you know what's in the outhouse? Crap. Well, you know what grows in crap? Everything. So you're either going to grow when you're in that valley, when you're in that outhouse of your life, or you're going to die if you just sit there and suck it in. So I believe that, yep, you know, we grow the most as human beings as when we face life's curves, when we're in that outhouse, and that allowed me to come back to what I call the most important part of that penthouse to the outhouse is the back. And the back is where I began to have the opportunity through, yes, some of my success, but through the real depths of challenges of my life there after baseball and the health, which I still deal with. I believe that I learned and grew the most and then began to be able to become significant.
Ed, you're breaking up a little bit. I want you to tell me a story of how your preaching, if you will, how your motivational speeches has made a difference on someone. Give me an example of someone whose life, because you were able to turn your life around, whose life you turned around, and tell me the joy that you got from that.
Yeah, that's a very good point. You know, there's just multiple. I mean, I save emails. Is there anybody that stands out in your head?
How about, is there anybody, perhaps maybe you could refer to your son? You know,
yeah, well, I mean, at his age, he's not as influenced by Dad as other people are.
Okay.
You know how that works.
Okay.
But, you know, I have had people tell me that, Ed, I was in the hospital and the doctors didn't know if I was going to make it. And I had two books that got me through it. I had the Bible and I had your book. Without those, I wouldn't have made it. I've had people say that they were contemplating suicide. And because they would follow up by saying, and we had to go to that darn meeting. You know, I hate going to those meetings, listen to all those useless speakers. And I just despise it. But I am so thankful that I was forced to come, as we all were, to that meeting, right, and you were there, and you spoke directly to me. And you turned around my stinking thinking and made me realize that I didn't have things so darn bad after all. And you helped me to understand that it is.
I don't know, Ed, I don't know if you're breaking up just on my line or if you're breaking up on your line. Are you moving around at all? Are you on a cell?
I hear you very clearly.
Okay. So let me move my phone around. It's a landline, but it doesn't have a wire to it. It's a crazy world of technology that we live in. So this guy, he comes to you and he tells you this. And how did that affect you? I mean, I know how it affected you, but tell me from your feelings.
Well, I think I've been taking, give or take, 5 to 10, 30 pills a day since 1992 when I had the first of my 3 kidney transplants. And
wow.
I tell people, and this is just an analogy, but this is so true. in my life that the best pill I can ever take, metaphorically, is when I have the opportunity to be in front of an audience to speak, or when I get that email or that letter where somebody heard me speak or they read my book,
right,
and it changed their life. That is, that's significance. And that is what, to me, life is all about now. I once thought baseball and all that stuff was what life was about, success. But you brought it up, the significance. That brings you the real, true, deep joy from the human experience. There's no better medicine. There's no better joy that comes from life than when you know that you have made a difference in another human being's life. And
Tell me the story about how you met your wife. Tell me the story about how you met your wife.
Well, that's a good lead right off of what I'm talking about. Is in 1986, my rookie season, as any ball player, lots of girls want to go hang out with you, and I had been out with New York girls, but man, for an old Southern boy, they were real fast, and I was just waiting to get home to the Southern Bells, and I just kind of given up on that part of things. And but one of our teammates, Randy Neiman, his wife was giving birth at the hospital at North Shore Hospital on Long Island, and he comes back and he tells me, "Hey man, you got to come up and visit my wife. You're one of the only single guys on the team. There's a nurse that my wife really likes, and she's single, and she is tall, lanky, blonde hair. And she doesn't talk like a New Yorker." And he said, the only problem is they wear those scrubs. I can't tell if she's got any hooters or not. Us ball players, we're always goofing off on that.
Well,
so we're actually standing in the outfield for batting practice at Shea Stadium. And I said, "Randy, I'm fine. I appreciate you thinking of me, man. And send your regards to my wife. But man, I've had enough of these New York chicks. They're a different breed." So I blew him off. Well, less than a week later, Ray Knight, our third baseman, was the honorary chairman of the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation, the New York chapter. They were having their final meeting. It was late in the season, and he had promised to bring a few ball players with him. Well, late in the season, who wants to come to the park at 12 o'clock or 11:30 and be there all day? I mean, it's not like you're going to come to the park, go home and back. So he went around the locker room, and I saw Ray because he was lockered near me, and I knew what he was up to, trying to get some people to come to the park early the next day and show up for this last meeting, which was about 500 people. And when he asked me, I had to tell him honestly that, "Hey Ray, look, I can't make it. I wish I could help you out because I'm doing something with some little leaguers in Queens right about the same time over lunch." And I said, "I'm sorry, but I can't help you, man. I'm already booked up for doing something." And I was doing something for somebody else, and that's cool. But I knew that Ray didn't have anybody to take with him, or nobody was going to show up. And that kind of stinks when you tell people you're going to bring some friends, and then nobody shows up. You don't have any friends, right?
Right.
So as it turned out, the next day I got through with my little function, and a limo had picked me up and was taking me back to Shea to get to my car. I was going to drive back to my apartment, and I remembered Ray, that he was upstairs in the plaza, the big restaurant up in Shea Stadium.
Right,
and I thought, man, do I go home to my apartment and get a big old deli sandwich on the way back and watch a soap opera or two and come to the park later on, 3 or 4 hours later? Or do I go upstairs and help out a teammate, because I know he's up there left hanging because nobody showed up, one of us. And then I thought about the audience. It was cystic fibrosis, parents mostly, of children, life expectancy less than 18 years old. Parents that had to pound on the backs of their young kids just to help them breathe through the night. And so that day, I tell people I made a great decision. I decided to go up and do something for Ray and to be there for those families. And I walked in the back of the room just as Ray had been announced, and it was a big audience. And I was a little bit shy. I wasn't a showboat kind of guy, but Ray's eyes lit up from the podium. He was way up in the front of the room. I came to the big back doors, and he goes, "Hey, here's I told you I was bringing some teammates, our catcher, Ed Hearn." And, man, about that time, I found the quickest seat I could find and sat down in it. And within a couple minutes, I sat first seat I came to. Well, as fate would have it, as Cupid would have it, a little girl by the name of Kristen with cystic fibrosis I sat down next to. She was on my lap in 5 minutes and just had me by her pinky. I mean, she was so cute. And, I guess just, chronic and sick children seem to grow up so much quicker as far as spirit. It's like they get to live life faster sometimes if they're healthy enough. And so we're having a good time. So the banquet ends, and her mom passes over a game ticket to me, and it's just a typical standard thing we do is sign stuff, But this was a unique request. She said, "Would you sign this ticket?" I said, "Sure." So I started to sign it. She said, "I think you know this girl." I said, "Well, how's that?" She said, "Well, a teammate of yours, Randy Neiman, was trying to set you up with her a week or so ago." And I'm like, "How do you know that?"
Whoa.
He said, and she said, "Well, I work at North Shore University Hospital." And I'm going, "Oh my goodness, what a small world." I mean, so I'm like, incredible. "Oh my goodness." So I mean, I might have been hit by a lot of.
Now you have to meet this.
Yeah, right. I mean, yeah, right. Now right. I mean, I've been hit by a lot of foul tips, but I wasn't a dumb guy. I mean, even if I thought all New York kids weren't this bad. So
you did wear a mask. And by the way, on behalf of my fellow New Yorkers, you don't know from New York chicks. That's too bad you don't. That's all right. And a lot of them don't know from Floridians, but everybody misses out. I just want to tell you, everybody misses out.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, we do. We go right past open doors all the time.
Right.
But fortunately, in this case, I could have went home.
Fortunately, she was not a New York. She's not a New Yorker, by the way. Your wife.
No, what is she? Long Islander?
Yeah. She was from Long Island, but she didn't speak like you said. She didn't speak like she was from New York.
She didn't. She had traveled a little bit, and she was different. And but most importantly, she was a nurse. And
nurses are nurturing, absolutely.
God's fate, however you want to call it, destiny brought her to me, and I'm very thankful for that. But the point is, in that story, that if I hadn't have been there and hadn't gone to do something to somebody else, who knows? I mean,
right. But it was your thinking. It was cystic. You said, "Wow, this is cystic fibrosis. Let me get up there." And this is when you were on top. This isn't when you're on the bottom, going down. This is when, New York Mets, blah, 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 world champion, and you're doing all this from, and how many other teammates? Ray Knight, you, how many showed up that day?
That's it.
That was it. Good point. Huh?
And that's common. I mean, unfortunately, in our culture today, even back then,
but you're the guy who shows up.
me. And I get the reward, don't I?
You get, by showing up, you get the seeds. You get the fruit of this. I mean, it works that way. And,
well, in corporate America, Zig, I talk about almost every time. The old corporate saying, think outside the box, right? When I say that to an audience, so I'm going to give you the key right now to not only success but significance. So this is really important key. And it goes like this. Think outside, and everybody echoes in the audience, box. And I go, oh my gosh, no, people. A box? You think that's a key? No, let me tell you what's really key in life is that you think outside yourself. When you learn to think outside of yourself, you now become a good leader, a good husband, a good teammate. You have to think outside yourself. And as you and I talked last night, we were talking about, maybe some differences in political or different views, but it all boils down to, our culture today is I, me. What's in it for me? And I got to tell you, the true significance, the true joy of life that we spoke about earlier, comes when we think outside of ourselves.
Very well.
Not some stupid box. And I tell you, here's a little saying that now is kind of my motto to life. Is that you asked me to kind of pinpoint just one person or somebody, give me an example of somebody's life is impacted. I think here's what's more important. Yes, I know of lots of people. I have emails and files of letters, and I've had conversations, phone calls. But you know what is even bigger than that? Bigger than the people that I happen to know about. Here's what I believe. And it goes, this little saying just hits it on the head. We don't never know who we're going to impact. I mean, we may know some of them. But this little saying, I can't quote anybody for saying it because I cannot find a source, and I always will quote somebody if I can find a source for it. But listen to this little saying. Anyone can count the seeds in one apple, but no one can count the apples in just one seed.
Oh. Wow.
In other words, yes, I may hear about one or two people, or many in my case, from different times, but you never know, really, who you're going to impact.
How many are out there, and in what way they affected, and in what way they affected other people, who in turn affected other people.
Exactly. That's the big point. It's the domino effect.
Right.
And it's momentum. Right. See, we talked about momentum in sports, but you can change momentum by changing one person.
I don't know why I flashed on Bernie Sanders going to be the next president right there. I just flashed on that, but that's all right. That's what we have differences. We talked about this, and they're wonderful differences because they can be discussed. What about the corporate world today? The way things are set up most disturbs you. The way business and government are intertwined. What most disturbs you about all that stuff? I'm just curious.
Exactly what we have just been talking about. When you think about I, me, that word is greed.
Okay.
Selfishness.
Corporate greed. All right.
Yep. Corporate greed. Selfishness. And people that take it even beyond greed and do malicious, deceptive ways to increase their greed, their power, their pocketbooks. That is why I started the nonprofit called The Bottom of the Ninth, where character counts. Because I believe the good guys, that's us, good guys with good hearts that think outside of ourselves. I think it's the bottom of the ninth, and we're facing teams. They're a team that's made up of, you can see on my website, I have the losers and the good guys. And the losers are things, character traits like deception, greed, apathy, laziness, and too much of our society today fits into some of those categories. And in our corporate world today, I fully agree with you that there are too many people are focused on what's in it for me. Mm-hmm. And you know what? That you can go back to as far as you want in the history of civilization. And when great countries, great powers have become so full of themselves and so greedy, and then they become lustful, and they start falling into deeper and deeper traps. That has been the downfall of every great civilization through the history of time. And you speak of the corporations in America and even around the world, that is a trait that will bring us down. And I would argue that our American dominance and our American being the beacon on the hill for the rest of the world, we're losing that influence because of attitudes like the capitalistic approach of being. I don't mind capitalism, but I don't like it when capitalism becomes the almighty all thing and the only goal.
Right. Well, you certainly express yourself well, Mr. Hearn. You're not just some old jock hanging in life and going to autograph shows, and that's all. And that's why you got a smile on your face, and you got a warm heart, and I'm thrilled to have you as a guest. I hope you'll come back from time to time. Oh, you got to tell me about the Ewing Kaufman. You met Ewing Kaufman, the owner of the Kansas City team, right? And
yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You were traded over there, and like you said, 2-3 months into the season, and you were a hell of a prospect because you brought the Mets David Cohen, and there's an expression in baseball: nothing from nothing. You got to give to get. And
yes, sir.
Everybody knows that. Nobody's out to horn each other. They're just a good deal for both teams is what everybody wants to hear. Nobody wants
in an ideal world, but I think there's a lot of capitalism in baseball, and somebody would like to get more than they give away. But
then you don't get to deal with that person again. If you horn somebody, in other words, you weren't injured as a Met, and they traded you over as damaged goods.
Right.
You were injured when you got there, but so if you were damaged goods, they wouldn't trade with you again. They wouldn't trade with the Mets again, and reputations get around. So my point being, if you were talented enough to bring David Cohen, you had something going for you. And then you get hurt, and after that, the warm owner, and you can't blame him in one way, and I'm sure he didn't say it with rancour. How did he tell you that?
Yeah, well, he didn't say it to my face. It's just, and fans around Kansas City echoed the sentiments, and quite frankly, I argued to keep the sentiments that were spoken, that I was the worst trade in Royals history. And I've held on to that for, been almost 30 years. But, here's the key to that. And you were asking how I handle it, how I feel about that. Well, I think there's probably many in your audience, because I know the challenges that we all face. And one of the challenges we face is things that happen outside of our control. And there's a great organization, the AA, Alcohol Anonymous. They have a prayer, the prayer of serenity. And it goes like, at the end of it says, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage, which is very important, to change the things that I can, and then the wisdom to know the difference. So, that is, when you're playing a ball game, you got, the other team, especially if you're in Philadelphia, New York, or Boston, or in some of these other, they're talking about your mama and your sister, and you do, they tell you all these things that you do that I can't say on radio.
Right.
But
you probably
if you worry about those things and consider the source, yeah, right. So and you have to grow to just let that run off your back. But when it comes to this issue that's been long term and everything, I've grown so much through the curves that I began to understand that, hey, are you kidding me? John Sherholtz, he told me specifically just even a couple of years ago when he said, you know what, the scout that we had scouting you, what he said was gospel. And he said, Ed Hearn's the man. Well, Ed Hearn was the man, but Ed Hearn can't control, and neither can John Sherholtz, whether you get hurt. There are things that happen to us all in life that we can't control, but we have to have the courage to change the things we can do. And I believe that's the part of the rest of my story, the back part, the baseball battles and beyond. Beyond is about having the courage to grab yourself where you need to and get back in that batter's box and make something out of what seems to be nothing. But it's something you can control. I could not control the physical damage to my shoulder. It's humanly impossible. But I could control how I handled not only that, but the loss of my health, as hard as it was at sometimes. And that's where, we can go into other themes that I'm just so into, teamwork and hanging around with good people like you and I talking today. I know that you make a difference.
Oh, Ed, this is really nice for me. I'm used to talking to a lot of people, and most of the people I talk to don't dwell on the reality of life. Just talk about how things are going, the good points, the good memories, and what have you. Life's not like that for anyone. I don't want you to feel that you're the Lone Ranger. You're not the only one that suffers, and it doesn't have to be physical suffering.
Oh.
People suffer mentally, and the suffering is just as real for one reason or another. So, but there's no mistaking what you've gone through physically, and your courageous manner in which you handle it.
Well, I appreciate it, Guy. I just want to tell you that, you're right. Everyone faces challenges. But I believe, I believe that you have gotten to that, maybe it's like we were talking last night, we get wiser as we get older because of our experiences. But when you become wise enough, and this is a big, I barely can say this, but when you're thankful for the challenges, because you have enough experience with them that you know that you're going to get better and grow from those experiences in the long run. And that is what sets you in motion to have the courage to come back.
There's no way to put what you said in italics on an MP3. But if one could repeat what you just said, it's in your words. Just about growing from you're thankful for your experience. That would be in italics right there.
Yes, it would. It would.
Very well said, Ed.
Yes, sir. But when I sign an autograph, if I have time and there's a space, I have my signature thing is I write "Keep swinging," and that's my little message that I could write. People write Bible verses or best wishes. Best wishes. Who cares? But I'm trying to give people a message, a little hidden message. Just keep swinging, because, hey, buddy, I know you're going to face some tough curves. Or, young man, I know you're going to face some tough stuff. You always remember this right here. See, that says keep swinging. That means don't ever give up.
Ooh. And how could one not respond to that? After hearing what you've been through and didn't give up. And that's terrific. You got me in tears. And I had you in tears yesterday when I did my my Voice of the Yankees thing.
Will you introduce me one more time? Introduce me one more time.
What number did you wear with Kansas City? Was it 49?
It was number 7.
Number 7 with Kansas City. So...
Yankee Stadium.
The Yankees would come on and go, now batting for the Yankees, number 7. Take 2. Now batting for the Royals, number 7, Ed Hearn, number 7. That was the best I can do.
That's not bad,
like
buddy.
I told you yesterday, it's my only talent. It's my only talent. I could do.
I'm not buying that for 1 second, partner.
All right, that's why you'll be back as a guest, because I could run things by you.
Yes, sir.
Hey,
it's been a pleasure, my friend. Absolutely.
Okay, it was just as much pleasure today as it was yesterday when we got to know each other a little bit, and I'm going to remember this and your being for a long time. Please come back, check in whenever you want to just talk, whenever you have something to talk about the world or whatever. It doesn't have to be formal. You call me and we'll do an MP3 and we'll make a show out of it.
Well, folks, feel free to, if you have any input or people want to, they can find out more about my work and efforts at edhearn.com. And my nonprofit, the Bottom of the Ninth, is bottomoftheninth.org. And because I can't meet all the people that you get to influence, so maybe there's just other ways, and hopefully you'll bring up some of my little nuggets down the road in some of your future broadcasts.
Absolutely, and I'm real happy to know you. That's the best thing I can tell you.
Well, it's always good to meet people of like mind, and we have more like minds than
I'm going to leave you with the way I end every show. I'm going to tell you and my whole audience to keep your dreams wet and your humor dry. Keep your kids out of military recruiting stations, and keep your children and grandchildren off the laps of clerics that wear dresses, just to be on the safe side. Everything may work out either way. Personally, it's a lot about self-responsibility. I gave you those 4 nuggets. The 5th one is keep on keeping on, and that goes along with how you live your life. Thanks, Ed. Enjoy it.
Beautiful, brother. Take care. Keep swinging, man.
I will. You the same, man.
Thank you.